My name is Michael Brown. I am a digital marketing consultant with a alias MegaMikeJr. I work for a company called R&L Carriers as the SEO manager, and I do a couple talks here and there pertaining to search and organic. So I'm looking forward to this, and I hope you guys get a lot out of it. So moving forward, I want to know that what we're going to be talking about is basically the approaches, challenges, benefits, resources, and best practices for producing a organic campaign. More specifically on the search on the organic side than the paid side, but I will be talking a little bit about the paid side as well. In this presentation, I also want to make note that you can also see this slide and also ask information in regards to anything else through megamikejr.com/UFSEO. Just type that in the vanity URL and you'll be able to request my slide deck as well as any of the tools and things I'm going to be discussing today, or you can get my Twitter handler at MegaMikeJr. So the first thing is what to expect. So you'll learn how to get started with some of the resources that are really available to you already that you do not have to pay for, and how you can build your approach to be an A+ SEO professional. The first thing we're going to talk about today is defining your audience and setting your goals. Research audience reach, plan out your content, and choosing a CMS. If you guys have questions, make sure to also jump on the group chat to ask away. I have Lisa on there as well. She's going to be helping me answer any of the questions that you have as we go through this. So the first thing that we want to talk about is defining your audience and setting goals. It's the first approach to any organic campaign, or I should say SEO campaign, so that you can set yourself up for success. Some of the things that I like to do is start out with questions. What do you want to target? Or who do you want to target? Typically, you get everyone saying, everyone, I want to target everyone. Well, that's not typically the best case scenario for anything moving forward. You have to be very diligent in who you're targeting and why you're targeting them. So the first question I ask after that would be, do you have an existing customer base? Typically, some businesses, or if you're dealing with this yourself, they already have sales data that they can use. So tap into your existing data to get a better understanding of who actually uses your product or services. You can use a lot of different CRMs to do that, and it's very helpful in identifying when people are purchasing, how long they're purchasing out from, where they're purchasing, and it just gives you a lot more demographics as well. And with that being said, you can also build out your customer personas. So in other words, what are their age ranges, what are their genders, geographical location, income level, and education. Education being on the how am I going to speak to my customers, what kind of language and messaging am I going to use to capture them as a potential customer. So this is my audience that I want to target. Other things like general shopping habits as well assist you in identifying how your user responds, or your potential customer responds to potential engagements. So there are many different types of CRMs in which I use or I've used in the past to capture some audience information so they can build customer personas out. And most companies have them. So you can use Salesforce, Zoho, SharpSpring, HubSpot, Infusionsoft, Zapier. A lot of those are just very common ones that most marketing professionals use to get the information and collect the information from how qualified is my audience? How do I define my audience through these systems? You also have a lot of different integral type systems that companies use that aren't necessarily structured like these, such as Salesforce. But even if they have a spreadsheet or some sort of data collection type tool, that's going to assist you in building out your customers' audience list and building customer personas. So extremely important as far as moving down the road is being successful in the field of strategizing. To build a successful online campaign, you definitely have to identify that before you're moving forward. Next question I ask is, why do you want to target them? Always ask the intent. The intent of why you're doing something is extremely important, just as much as it is defining your audience. Questions like, are you primarily trying to get more conversions on your website? Do you want to get more people to come to your physical location? Maybe there's some local SEO involvement here that I need to use in my strategy. What do you expect searchers who come across your content to actually do? right? So this is important to identifying, how you're going to get them to do things on your site or through your content. Maybe you're mostly looking to create brand awareness. Maybe this is something that you just want the brand across. Maybe you just want more people to understand your brand in more depth. Or you could just maybe want to become a source of trusted information, which is very well used today on many different levels as becoming an industry expert. Some of the other things to take into consideration is know what triggers your audience, right? So I like to think about the psychological triggers that people use and how you can engage and interact with your potential audience once you've defined them a little bit more. Things like commonality, curiosity, anticipation. So what are the types of things that motivate your audience? This is all part of the defining your audience phase when building out an organic campaign or a search campaign in general. The next step would be what results do you want to achieve, right? So these were your goals come into play. So set up goals for what you'd like to accomplish. A lot of the times I ask this question and they go, I want more traffic. And I go, well, why? Why do you want more traffic? I want to capture more emails. Again, why do you want to capture more emails? Or I want more sales. Well, how do you want more sales? I mean, there's many ways in which you can get sales, but how do you want to bring your customers to the site so that you can deliver the appropriate messaging and direction through the sales funnel to capture more of those sales? So the how factor is also important. So the more specific you are with what you want to achieve, the more granular you can get when building out an SEO campaign. And again, this all leads to qualified audience. So the more qualified an audience is that comes to your site, the more opportunity you have of actually converting them through your goals, whether that be a micro conversion on an email lead capture or an actual sale of your product. So those are extremely important. So now you know a little bit about that. So research potential audience reach, for example. This is the next step, is how much of an audience exists. So we know how much, or we know who the audience is. We have our goals. Now we want to know how much of this audience exists online. So you want to know, is there volume there? Is there actual an audience to actually target? Demand generation is another thing to consider, but it's far more sophisticated and requires an entirely different approach. So for the sake of time, we're going to just focus on existing audience bases online. So the search volume, people that are actually searching for our products or services. So you can do this by taking a closer look at keyword volume and competitiveness for search words and terms related to what you have to offer. And a lot of this is already used today in a number of different tools, both paid and non-paid. But I want to speak more about the non-paid side of the tools because that's where you guys can hit the ground running without actually having to invest in anything. So some of the tools that I want to talk about that are going to be the primary tools today are Keyword Planner, basically how to leverage that, Google Trends, and Google Suggest. So those three tools are going to be the primary focus for this webinar on actually building your campaign out and using them effectively to come up with a good strategy. There are a ton of different paid keyword research tools, which I did want to talk a little bit about. So there are, I would say, roughly three primary keyword tools that are used today from SEOs. And they essentially have their own keyword database and break things down differently with their own proprietary algorithms. And interestingly enough, they also use keyword data from Keyword Planner to pull in volume information. So just keep that in mind that a lot of these tools are leveraging some of the free versions through different APIs, but also have their own proprietary algorithms from a time management standpoint that help and assist you in being more timely and effective with your strategy. But if you do set yourself up through a good process and understand how to use the free tools, you can be very efficient in producing an organic strategy fairly quickly without actually having to pay for it. So for example, SEMrush is one of them. They have well over 100 million different keywords in their own database. They use things called KD and CD, which is keyword difficulty and competitiveness density, that help them kind of identify more competitive search volumes. You have Ahrefs, who uses UR and DR, DR being domain rating and UR being URL rating. So those are their own proprietary algorithms for kind of rating this system. And probably the one you've heard most of is Moz Keyword Explorer, which uses DA and PA, your page authority and your domain authority. Now this has a lot to do with all these different tools trying to reverse engineer Google's PR back in the day, which is your PageRank algorithm, to help identify how we can better rank a page and how much authority a page actually has based off of a number of different attributes, or what you can call variables, right? So these tools do assist and get more granular and help you with deciding what keywords I should go for when building out my strategy for SEO. But we're going to talk a little bit about those three. First one is Google Keyword Planner. That are the free ones. Google Keyword Planner lets you discover different keywords based off of volume and targeting. Off to the right there, you can see, if you've never used it, you have the ability of doing targeting through locations, languages, different networks through Google. You can associate what's called negative keywords, so you can remove keywords from your search, and a couple other different features that are going to assist you in getting more granular with how you can identify keywords for your audience. So again, this is the research phase on you've identified and defined your audience, you know what your goals are, and now it's time to find out what people are actually searching for within that demographic. So the keyword data you get from this tool can be used to plan your SEO campaigns with keywords more likely to put your message in front of the right searchers. So when you're doing research on the keyword side, make sure that you're going back to traditional search and seeing what the results are from those keywords that you're identifying to see if the messaging actually fits your audience. Because you've identified already who your audience is by defining them more specifically through customer personas, does the messaging and search results, in other words, the titles and descriptions that are presented in search results, fit that demographic? Going hand in hand with that, you'll know that, do I have the ability to convert them and how qualified they are for me to actually use this keyword in my overall strategy? So use Google Keywords Planner to get a better idea of what keywords to use within your content for paid and organic efforts. The beauty of what that statement there is that once you've already done your research and you've found organic opportunity for that keyword, you can essentially use the same page that you're going to build out organically as the landing page for your paid side. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone in this instance, where now you're ranking well organically and you have good placement and positioning, but you also want to improve your quality score, or you have a good quality score because of the fact that you've incorporated that same keyword with the same messaging both on the paid and the organic side into your landing page. So when you start an auction and say, for example, AdWords, Google AdWords, and you want to bid on a keyword and pay for that keyword and do well in that aspect, you could essentially have a good quality score that's not going to affect your bidding strategy. So this is the beauty of that. You can also identify competitiveness through landing page research. So Keyword Planner, if you find a competitor that does very well, positions very well, or has a good paid landing page, you can essentially tap that URL into the planner and identify what keyword opportunities they are using for gaining traction. It's great to see what they're doing so that you can kind of say, okay, we know this business is making money. We know this business is doing well online. I kind of want to mimic that in a way, or make it better, make it unique, make it my own. Let's see what they're doing, what keywords they're paying for, what keywords they're positioning or potentially positioning for that are going to assist us in our efforts. For this webinar, I'm going to be talking about Buckeye balls. Anyone in the comments know anything about Buckeye balls? Please, comment away. I've heard a lot about Buckeye balls. Basically, it is a snack. It is something that you can create during holiday seasons it's kind of like a sweet, just a sweet dish to create, right? So I did, in Google Keyword Planner, a keyword search on Buckeye balls to see what the monthly volume was. In this instance, it's 4,400 monthly volume. We can still see that there's some trends across the year, so people are searching for it year round. And it also gives me some more and additional information on related keywords so that I can choose and pick other keywords associated with the one that I primarily want to target. And then if you wanted to look at landing pages, you can modify search by clicking the modify search button to include landing page beyond just keywords. Great tool, highly recommended. Next one is Google Trends, and this one is going to be specifically on regions. So when and where are people searching for Buckeye balls the most, for example? So if you do a search in Google Trends and you look for it, you can see that Kentucky, Vermont, Alabama, Ohio, and Indiana are the places in which we want to target most, because I know that that's where the volume's coming from mostly, right? So let's take a step back, and I want to paint the picture of building a SEO campaign out based off of Buckeye balls. Say, for example, my product is a Christmas recipe book, or I'm just going to say it's a recipe book, right? So I want to create a recipe book that I want to sell online to consumers based off of nothing but Buckeye balls, okay? And I've already identified so far that there's keyword volume for Buckeye balls um, year round. So people are searching for them, and there are some trends to this. So I know that where they're searching from mostly, and where I can be targeting more specifically. An example here would be by interest. So here's the past 5 years. If I'm using Google Trends to identify keywords, and I'll be more specific in this, all right, I'm looking for Buckeye balls year round. I can see that majority of people are searching for Buckeye balls during the December months year round. So we can see that this is more of a seasonality thing, where people aren't necessarily doing it throughout the year, but more toward the end of the year, where it's pretty much Christmas time. I'm sure people are creating dishes for parties and gatherings. So maybe this is important to people. So now I have a number of things, right? So I defined my audience. I know who it is. I know how to target them. I know that they're located more specifically in Kentucky, Vermont, and Alabama. I know this is a seasonality thing. So my most peak opportunities during the December months, okay? Now I want to create something where I have more online sales. And I'm thinking maybe I produce a Christmas recipe book for Buckeye balls. So I'm selling a Christmas recipe book for Buckeye balls here. I know, shoot me, it's probably the worst thing that you can probably think of as far as building a recipe book for Buckeye balls, but I found that there's interest over time, and it could potentially be a top seller during the month of December year round, or year over year, I should say. So moving forward, let's talk about that a little bit more. So I use another tool called Google Suggest or Google Autocomplete. Other than Google Keyword Planner and Google Trends, this is something you already use on a daily basis that you don't even realize you're using. Traditionally in search, when you're typing for something, you get these drop-down menus that give you related search terms. These are pretty awesome, and I'll tell you why. Autocomplete is an important audience reach data because it's short-term results, and they aren't usually reflected in the same data you would get with keyword research tools like Keyword Planner and Google Trends, because those are long-term trends. These are short-term trends. So Google identifies with things that are happening in a shorter amount of time than if they were to look at them historically. So what are people searching for in the moment? How can I deliver a message or deliver a piece of content that speaks to what people are searching for now rather than in the past, right? So some of the ways in which you can find additional queries that you want to target, different keywords you want to target, is to actually adjust your search location settings in your browser. So you can actually say, okay, I know that they're in Kentucky and Vermont and Alabama, there's a lot of search volume. Let me adjust my browser settings to Kentucky. Let me adjust my browser settings to Vermont. And let me start searching for Buckeye balls. And let's see what pulls up in the drop-down menu, okay? Make sure to, and in this sense, make sure to avoid your personal search history. So your personal search history can affect it. So always remove when given the opportunity, or just clear your browser history in general. The thing that I start with once I do this and I meet these two steps is I start with the ABCs. So in other words, I go Buckeye balls A, what trails after A? I do Buckeye balls B, what trails after B? What are people searching for based off of the ABCs that are going to help me prepare and deliver just a magnificent, a beautiful piece of artwork as a content strategy, right? So these are essential. So using these three tools right here are going to help you significantly and starting to build out a strategy for targeting your audience with your product or service. And also even try using incorrect spelling. Sometimes incorrect spelling helps out significantly. Some people may not actually spell Buckeye the way you think they do in different states, or maybe it's a very difficult word for people to actually spell out. So always look to see if there's any any issues whatsoever with Buckeye or any of the other terms that are on there that through your search that might be affected. Because I've found over time that people do search for things incorrectly, which you could capitalize off of if wanted. In other words, you can write a piece of content talking about the common ways of saying or writing or typing, or common ways people use the different terms and what term actually means and how to associate it appropriately. There's many ways you can strategize around that will help you capitalize off of incorrect spellings, for example. So audience reach tools, we talked about Keyword Planner, and it gives you the ability to see average search volume data and your costs for any paid AdWords campaigns. So you can adjust your targets and view keywords that are their close variants. Now I want to talk a little bit about that. When that word close variants, okay, if you've dealt with Google AdWords, for example, Google AdWords has a thing called broad match, exact match, phrase match, and broad match modified keywords. And basically all that is saying that if I chose the keyword Buckeye balls, that means that anything in a broad match sense that Google identifies being related to that keyword, it'll throw into the pool. So it's not going to give you the specific search terms people are searching for. It's only going to give you what Google identifies as being related to that keyword. This is where I suggest, rather than investing your money, time, and energy into paid search tools, why don't you invest time and energy into actually setting up a AdWords campaign for your product or service and seeing what people are searching for? Because when you do that, Google actually gives you the search terms that people are using to find your keyword. Any other tool that you use, they're not going to be able to do that because they don't know, only Google knows. In fact, the closest that you can probably get to that is using Google Search Console, which is another tool that helps you identify organic volume. Google Search Console, because of a lot of different restrictions as far as privacy and different terms of service agreements, they don't allow you to see a lot of things, which is why you see like not provided type stuff in your results through analytics or in console. So I definitely suggest investing time and energy into AdWords and coming up with those, because those are going to be just awesome for you moving forward from a scalable aspect to build more content off of. And then if you guys have ever used Google AdWords, let me know if you want to share insight information on AdWords and what you've expected or have seen over time through search terms versus keywords. Definitely comment and let me know through the chat group here, and I'll love to answer those questions as we're moving forward. Google Trends, that allows you to identify seasonality by region, metro, and even sometimes city. If there's enough volume for the city, you can actually get granular, as far as granular to the city level, which that would help you too on the AdWords side, because you notice and you've identified, hey, people are searching for this in that area. So to bring in more qualified traffic for that specific area, I'm going to build a paid campaign out specific to that area, which is going to reduce my overall budget and also be more specific to the keyword, because now it's an exact match keyword that people are searching for, meaning it's not broad. I'm not opening it up to a ton of different searches, and it's specific to that area, and it's going to lower my CPC, so my cost per click. So not only am I not spending a ton on a daily basis, but my cost per click is lower because I've identified this, right? So it also allows you to see some things like related queries that are trendy. So trends are important because it gives you that seasonality factor. When you're looking at your CRM, sometimes when you're identifying that to the business, you can see when people are searching for things, or not necessarily searching, but when people are actually buying things, but you never know when people are actually searching for them. There might be a delay in time. So it may be like 5 days to 30 days to even 90 days out before someone actually makes the decision to purchase. And when you're talking products and services, those are two entirely different things, where services take a lot longer down the sales funnel because they're probably more costly than if you were to purchase just a generic product. So sometimes products can be bought or purchased within the day, whereas services take a lot of time to build a relationship up to actually push them down the sales funnel. Google Suggests helps identify recency and freshness queries. So again, to reiterate on that, what people are searching for in a short amount of time is that this is more recent and more fresh. So people that are in the moment and are looking for those queries that aren't necessarily finding what they're wanting, or even being able to identify that those queries existed because no historical data is present. So this happens to be golden if the query doesn't exist, for example. And the next slide actually tells you a little bit more about that. It's about the good, better, best model. So it's good to identify keywords. It's better to identify the trends, but it's best if you find a freshness query, because 15 to 20% of queries performed on Google today have never been performed before. So this is where the interesting comes into play, right? So if we're talking about building a SEO campaign out, and we're looking for keywords, and we're finding keywords that have been historically present, and they no longer exist, or say, for instance, people are searching differently than today because language changes so frequently, Google has to identify how to rank those pages quickly. So it's not like they have user experience data based, like, for example, if someone lands on a page, they have dwell time that assists the page in performing better in positioning of search. So they need to do something that helps that. And if you get a freshness query and you deliver a better result than your competitors, you're going to be successful. So this is the best model that I can think of for you, is use traditional search and leverage Google Suggest to find those relevant search terms that are more fresh, that are going to help you provide data in a more timely and a more immediate manner, because today's standards, everything being mobile, the quicker the better, right? Okay. So now we're going to plan out our content, right? This is where our content strategy comes into play. This is where I want to say the difficulty part. So the difficulty of SEO is, where defining your audience and researching audience reach is probably the hardest part of the entire process. And the reason why I say that is because if you don't get it right in that aspect, everything else you do moving forward is going to be a waste of time. So if you've misdefined or didn't define your audience correctly to begin with, you're targeting a user base that doesn't exist, or is probably not the correct user base. If you didn't set up your goals effectively, and your goals are to do things that you probably know aren't going to convert, more than likely you're not going to be successful. If you didn't select, for example, your keywords for that audience, more than likely there's going to be miscommunication in who you're targeting versus the messaging that you're delivering. So all of these things are really important, but also very difficult in the early stages of building a strategy. Let's talk about building a content blueprint. This is where it gets really fun, I think. So the SEO industry is filled with many terms that are used interchangeably in regards to content, right? I'm sure if you guys have heard a lot about this, the different ways, but there's a ton of different ways in how you can say content strategy, so on and so forth. So for example, cornerstone content is a term that's used. Content siloing is a term that's used. Content theming is another term that's used. I think content siloing was coined, or I should say siloing in itself was coined by Bruce Clay, who's a top SEO professional, who's supposedly the godfather of SEO, who uses this term a lot. You have structured content, content architecture, la-di-da, blah, blah, blah. I threw that one in there because it just goes on and on. There's a lot of different ways in which you can say this in building a content strategy, but we're going to refer to this as a blueprint because it's much more than just keywords and topics. It has a lot to do with the user experience and the crawler communication of things that make it successful. So the idea behind structuring your content is so that you can build topical relevancy, right? So topical relevancy within search, as well as building internal linking strategy. So what I mean by that is the way you tier and stack your content is important to building you as a topical expert or industry expert for that specific subject matter. But not only is it important for building a topical relevancy, it's also important for building an internal linking strategy. If you've attended my last webinar, we talked a lot about backlinks and how links work in general. But the internal linking strategy of your site is equally as important because you're dictating and deciding where to pass value off to each of those individual pages. So if you want to pass a value off to one page to the other and you have organic rankings for the primary page, that's going to be important because now some of that ranking factor is being passed off to those other pages. So let's talk about what a content blueprint consists of. So a content blueprint consists of site layout, which are your parent and child page structures. It also includes a page title, meaning your heading name. Probably most of you know this as your H1 as the tag. Your focus keyword. Some people coin this as the primary keyword, which I use in some of my documentation. Your URL structure are your permalinks. So in other words, what is the URL? How is the URL built? Your breadcrumb. So it's essentially the roadmap to where the user is located on your page. Your slug name, essentially the title or the name of that within the URL. And your metadata, your title and description. So your metadata is important because that is your ad copy that's presented in search results. Basically, that's where you're saying, hey, click me, I want you to visit my page. So that's important in many ways. I can talk about that in more depth later. So here is an example of how I strategize content. Okay, this is foundational SEO with the intent to scale. Excuse me. And what I mean by that is you have to build the foundation of your site before you actually start building your site. So when you're doing all your research, which research is first, and you're identifying all those things that we talked about, right? You can set up or use a document similar to this that's going to help you map out everything in a blueprint. So this is where you're going to be like, okay, developers, I need you to build these pages out this way. Okay, content, I need you to write these pages this way. And here's my examples, right? So you have your parent pages, your child pages, and your sub pages. Your parent pages being what you consider your cornerstone pieces, your money pages. This would be the Buckeye Balls page, for example, because I know Buckeye Balls page, that's my main topic. I want to rank for Buckeye Balls. I don't care what it takes to get there, but I want to do it. Child pages would be anything in addition to that that you can categorize. So it's more like a category page. It says, okay, things that are related to Buckeye Balls, I'm going to create a page for, and then I'm going to also segue off of that with some sub pages that are supplemental content to that. So this helps you make sure that your primary or your focus keyword is used throughout your title, your menu title, your H1, your permalink structure, your slug, your breadcrumbs, and your meta information like your title and description. So that when people are searching for this query, and I'm sure you've done this before where you've searched, you have more of a presence because it folds out and it identifies with that query in a more known fashion. So you have a better click-through rate and search results, and you have a better understanding of what the users to expect when they land on your page, because that's what you're writing about, right? So this helps you for scalability purposes. And the beauty of this is if you go to megamikejr.com/UF-SEO, I will share this document with you. You guys can have it. All those areas in red are actually formulas I created that are built off of what you put into the menu title and H1s. But what you have to make sure is that when you're building these out, make sure you're using the appropriate keywords across the board to map out what you're wanting to do. Right. Okay. So I want to talk about Buckeye Balls. So we've identified all those things, right? So we have our definitions of audience, we have our goals, we've identified some keywords that we want to use. Let's see how we can actually use this in a more effective way when building out an SEO strategy. So if I'm looking at Buckeye Balls, I noticed that we already identified there's a 4,400 monthly search volume for Buckeye Balls, according to Google's Keyword Planner. And now we've identified the competitiveness by saying, oh, wow, look at, there's 9,620,000 results for Buckeye Balls. Now that may be a little bit much. We can't expect to actually rank for that in a decent amount of time. So that's when we used Google's autocomplete or suggest to find a related keyword, which was Buckeye Balls Rice Krispies or Buckeye Balls with Rice Krispies. So we see people are searching for it within our demographic based off trends. When I did a search for Kentucky, Vermont, and Alabama, I noticed that there were little results, nominal results, even nationwide results that were not competitive whatsoever. So we have literally 96 results just for Buckeye Balls with Rice Krispies. So this is great and everything, just by identifying that. And we know that it's something we want to target, but how much volume is there actually for Buckeye Balls Rice Krispies? And that's where we move on and we say, let's go to Keyword Planner. So when we go to Google's Keyword Planner, we want to say, okay, I know that we have a good ability to compete for Buckeye Balls with Rice Krispies and Kentucky, Vermont, and Alabama. We really want to compete for Buckeye Balls in general, but let's capitalize off of what we can do in the meantime. So with that being said, 96 results for the Buckeye Balls with Rice Krispies, that's little to nothing. And then we have people who are searching for it on a monthly basis, 110. So we have more people searching for Buckeye Balls with Rice Krispies than there are actual results. I think that this is definitely a winner for us, right? So this is where, wow, this is gold, right? I've identified that the trendiness of this is going to be Kentucky, Vermont, Alabama, right? Those locations. I've identified that people are searching for them, kind of the relevance or the freshness of it is there. People are actually wanting information about this. I've also identified that there's little to no competition for this actual search term. Man, I should really capitalize off of this. This is something that I need to figure out how I can best serve the results to those users who are searching for it, right? Where this might get a little tricky is because you don't have as much competitiveness, you may not be able to cross-reference or compare to competitors. So are people actually looking for recipes? Are they looking for the product itself? Are they wanting to purchase something? You know, that's where it might get a little tricky, but now you've already identified there's some intent. People are actually looking, you know that there's demand. Now all you have to do is figure out what the supply is. The next thing I did is I looked at Google Trends interest over time. So over time, in the past 5 years, is this actually something that people are searching for, or is it just kind of a freaky thing that happens every so often? Well, you can see that there is some interest there that periodically happen, much like there was some interest for Buckeye Balls from a seasonality standpoint. This gives us hope that we can actually do something with this keyword or search term. So we have a lot of opportunity here, and I don't think this has been done. So if you guys want to take it on as a project on yourself, perfect. I strongly recommend going ahead and trying this out because I haven't personally done it. Create a site just off of Buckeye Balls and map it out in a way that's going to give you the ability to capitalize off this search volume that exists. Let's see here. All right. So we know what we need to do as far as a blueprint, right? So when we're looking at our blueprint here, we've identified the Rice Krispies section. So the Rice Krispies section to me would be a sub page. Our parent page being Buckeye Balls, our child page being maybe made with, for example, what can you make with Buckeye Balls? And then our sub page being the actual Rice Krispies in itself. So you have a scalable solution here. And if you use your ABCs, you can build out all of those categories and sub pages to accommodate your ability to rank for just the term Buckeye Balls, which has 4,400 volume monthly. That's extremely important. So this is where, when we're talking about building out a blueprint, you definitely want to consider all these factors because they all play hand in hand in the success of that. The next thing after you've already built that blueprint out is actual architect of a content management system and choosing a content management system, right? So we now have our audience definitions, we have our audience reach research, we also have a blueprint. What's next? Well, that's choosing the CMS, right? So choosing the right platform to develop on could be a make or break for your site. There were some questions that were asked when I asked Lisa, what are some things people want to know? And someone mentioned a comparison to what systems we should use, whether it should be like WordPress, for example, or should it be another system, or what should we be looking at from an SEO standpoint? Well, many people get hung up on which one is the best for search purposes, meaning crawler communication. And what I say is they're basically apples and oranges. So all these different tools that you can use to build a website out, they all kind of are different in their way. So one has a different color, different smell to it, a different taste. But if you really take a step back and look at them, they almost have the same weight to them, meaning performance, depending on how you use them, or depending on which ones you're comparing. So here's some things as to what to look for. And no matter what system builder platform you choose to build off of, to make sure, you just have to make sure it has a few of these elements in them, or is capable of doing these things. Make sure that it's flexible. Make sure that it gives you the freedom to optimize, meaning that if it doesn't have the ability for you to manipulate the breadcrumbs or the URL structure or the slug name, or even import your own meta information like your title and description, more than likely it's not going to be great for you. Make sure it's scalable. It has some managerial aspects to it. There's some out there that allow you to set up an editorial content calendar, or I should say at least set up a time frame where you can post things during specific times, so that you know that, hey, this post is, or this article or this page is going to go out during a certain day. You can manage that, and the people who are your content team, your editors, your writers, and so forth. So make sure it's scalable in that aspect. Make sure it's fast. This is probably one of the more important things. A lot of these builders are heavy and they bog down a site because they have visualizers and composers. They have page builders in them. They have all these graphical user interfaces that allow you to drag and drop things. That's all good and well from your standpoint, but from the customer facing standpoint, it's really slow. Loads really slow, and speed is a ranking factor in Google's eyes, and is becoming more and more of an issue. Make sure it's responsive. This is kind of back in the old days, but obviously with sites being mobile friendly, it's extremely important that I should say not sites, but more people are using mobile devices today, well over 50%. And especially with Google's mobile first index, being responsive is really important. So definitely make that a priority. Also make sure it's a supported infrastructure. So it's actually backed by people. If it's backed by community involvement, has a help system, that's very important if you run into snags. And that you own it. A lot of these systems don't allow you to even own your own website, or you're held restricted to their hosting environment and their technologies. It's great when you have the freedom to do what you want and when you want to do it. Or if you want to scale it, say your business is growing, you don't want to be held restricted to that and have to completely up and re-engineer the entire wheel, right? So that's important. My suggestion for a CMS is WordPress. Powering nearly 25% of the web, WordPress is an incredibly versatile platform, which makes it a smart choice for your content management system. One study found that nearly 70% of websites evaluated today had a WordPress-powered CMS. It's also an excellent CMS because it's flexible for clients, designers, and developers. This is great because I found there's a lot of limitations. People say WordPress is slow. The CMS isn't built correctly, but if you think about it logically, if 25% of the web today is WordPress-based, don't you think that Google would want to adapt to the majority? And if 25% isn't a majority to them, then they've got issues. I highly doubt that. I highly doubt that they're not looking at core and making sure they're crawling it effectively. So I would definitely consider WordPress as your choice of CMS for many reasons. But I'm going to start off by just telling you what are some of the top sites. So NASA, CNN, Forbes, the New York Times, TechCrunch, iZod, Best Buy. Those are just to name a few of the different sites out there today that are WordPress-based or have been WordPress-based, that are nothing to shy away from. As you can see, there's a lot of people who invest time and energy into them because they believe in the system and they know that it works. So finding the right themes and developing on the right system is very important. Other platforms to think about, you have Drupal, Joomla. Those are two content management systems similar to WordPress that are more sophisticated. They just don't have as clean of a UI as I think they should. Google Sites, Blogger, those are another two. Not that great as far as scalability. Wix, Weebly, Those I don't care for, just for the simple fact that they're heavy. They have a lot of performance issues, and you're restricted to those hosting environments. Medium and Tumblr, again, restricted to those hosting environments. You don't have ownership of them, and you just don't own the content, essentially. So those are the reasons why I had narrowed them down, but I've also notated the pros and cons of them, is because if you're going to choose something, which one best suits an SEO strategy, I would say WordPress does. And if you use WordPress in the correct sense, you could have a WordPress site that performs faster than traditional HTML5 site, which you have to hard program. It depends on how you use it and when you're using it effectively. So with that, I left some time to leave questions, but in summary, it's all about dominating virtual real estate. Everything that you do in this sense, you want to own top positioning for when it comes to an SEO strategy. You have to follow a tried and true systematic path, and you will be successful. We've talked about defining your audience, setting your goals, researching audience reach, and planning out your content just as much as we talked about choosing a CMS. And the beauty of this is that if you do all of these things and you do them correctly and over time with experience and knowing which methods work for you, you're going to find that these are going to be very streamlined, and you don't need paid tools to be successful. You don't need all those things. And in fact, you can invest in other things that do help you with what you're trying to accomplish. You may not be an agency. You may be just a blogger or a content writer who wants to be more successful on your end as far as building authority as an industry expert. So this is perfect. So this is my example that we talked about, is I want to rank for buck eyeballs. I know my categories or my child pages are going to be made with and made without. So I want things that are talking about buck eyeballs made with, for example, graham crackers, made with paraffin wax, made with Rice Krispies. And then I want to talk about buck eyeballs that are made without. So I want to say, for example, made without butter, made without powdered sugar, made without shortening, for example. And then we want to link them together in a content roadmap, which I didn't get to talk about because of lack of time. But internal linking is key in power to passing off authority from these pages. So in other words, we're not necessarily ranking high for buck eyeballs in the moment, but if we can rank high for Rice Krispies, right, made with Rice Krispies for that example, and we know we're in top positioning for that 110 monthly volume, we can pass some of that off to the other pages we want to rank high for until we get buck eyeballs to the topical relevancy we want them to be at. So with that being said, definitely take this into consideration. There's a lot of things going on here. If you want this slide deck, and if you want everything else that I talked about in the information as far as the document and template, go to megamikejr.com/UFSEO and fill out your name, and I'll send you an email, personalized email. If you have any questions moving forward, I'd love to help.